you won't sound that old. So karibu nyumbani.
Asante.
Great, Prof. Now, Professor, cultural epidemiology, for the benefit of our listeners, what is that?
Very good. That's a very good question. As we all know, in public health, we are looking into, the usual kind of epidemiology, which is the science of the distribution of diseases, the prevalence of diseases in a particular place. Just to make it very simple, is the science of epidemiology. However, that understanding does or should have a foundation, and that foundation is the society. The society has it. It is within a particular setting where culture prevails, where social living prevails, and therefore the pattern of diseases, the causes of diseases, the understanding of symptoms, and how people react to and manage those health problems is basically what social and cultural epidemiology is all about.
Okay. Now, what is epidemiology? Starting there, basically, for the benefit of a listener.
Yeah.
Is it how easiest can you define epidemiology?
Yeah, in a very simple term, it's about distribution of diseases in a particular setting. So in that distribution, you can look into who are most affected and the causes of the problems from statistical point of view. In statistics, so it's about percentages, rates, proportion of people who are affected. So if you are talking about a particular village, in that village, if we, like for instance, take diarrhea, so what is the distribution of diarrhea in a particular setting? Who are affected in that particular setting? What is it that people are doing in that particular setting? That what people do in particular may not necessarily be looking into what people really do in terms of their own understanding of the problem, in terms of the local resources that they have, but in terms of seeking services established by the public or private sector for that matter. So epidemiology is basically the distribution of diseases in a particular setting.
And now, Prof, when you look at it now from a cultural point of view, probably you've had very interesting results in the past studying that. And one thing I noticed is you've been into reproductive health, HIV and AIDS, cervical cancer. How do some of these relate with culture?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So that's what makes also us to really look at epidemiology, not from statistics point of view, but from the community's point of view. So when we look at disease distributions in statistical terms, then that's epidemiology per se from public health point of view. But if we are actually looking into how the local community understand the problem, it doesn't matter whether it's cancer, HIV, or skin diseases of any sort, then the next question is looking into how culture actually understands that particular problem, how culture defines that particular problem, how culture reacts to the potential solutions of that problem. So that's actually the community domain, the cultural domain of a particular disease. So you can talk about disease from pure statistics point of view, if you like, where you are talking about numbers, the number of people affected, the percentage of, and so on and so forth. But in this case, you are looking into what is the local understanding? Why is it actually considered as a problem in a particular setting? So that is actually the social cultural domain of a disease. So my research activities have always been, it doesn't matter which kind of diseases we are looking into, my research undertaking is really looking into the community domain of any diseases for that matter. And that starts from yeah, my philosophical understanding of community as an important resource to itself. I would say community is knowledgeable, and community has solutions for its own problem. So, as somebody uh, who is learning from the community, I am always interested to look at from that angle. So that's basically the the cultural, social, epidemiological aspect of any diseases, be it cancer, HIV, or other.
Okay. So once I've gone through the process of understanding how probably a certain community views certain diseases,
Yes.
what next now?
Yeah. So that's a very good question. The first and most important point is, as I started already talking about, there's no society that lives in health care kind of vacuum, or there is no society that could be, explained in terms of having no quote unquote understanding, no knowledge, no resources of health and health problems, as well as health resources. So the first and most important thing is recognizing, people, communities have their own understanding, their own resources of whatever diseases, whatever problems. It doesn't necessarily mean, it doesn't necessarily, should be related to health for that matter. It could be agriculture, it could be environment, it could be anything, right? So the critical point here is, if we recognize community as people with wisdom, then we scientists are there to learn from them. So the question, what is next, is actually for us who consider ourselves as scientists, as researchers. We need to start with that recognition. Start from the fact that this community, community necessarily is not people out in the rural setting, out in a pastoral setting, or out in urban setting. Community could as well be any entity that is viable for any study. It could be scientists, for that matter, who are expected to respond to a specific question of interest, or it could be teachers, student health professionals, right? So those are actually whom we are referring to community. So under different contexts, under different kind of studies, we are talking about different kinds of community. So the point here is, we have to recognize that researchers or scientists who intend to carry out a study should actually put themselves in a place of a student. We are students trying to learn from those who we follow. The irony of this is that if you are actually going to a community to generate evidence that you will use for programming, for science development, for policy, then it's very difficult to fail to recognize that these people are great people with wisdom, with resources. You are learning from them. So the next step is for any scientist, for any researcher to recognize that I am learning from them. They are my teachers. And therefore, we are actually considering them as equals. So they are partners. They are not participants. They are not, research subjects as some of the researchers would actually put in place. If you really look at research outcomes, sometimes you put your research community as subjects. I'm sorry, that's completely wrong. No, they are teachers. They are the ones who are actually providing you with evidence, and therefore, the next step is if in Africa, we have to be relevant to the community at large in terms of what we generate, then we have to consider the community as partners, as really great partners from whom we are learning. So the next step is actually advocating on that, making sure future researchers are also recognizing that one, and obviously the present researchers as well could actually, realize that is a reality on ground.
Okay. Having worked for so many years actively with communities,
Yes.
and especially I think in Ethiopia, and I would say definitely with knowledge of the other countries in Africa as well, and probably even globally, why do we have so many outbreaks of some of these diseases in Africa? Or is it a hoax that we do? Because the perception is there's always something that there's an outbreak happening somewhere in Africa. Why do we have all this prevalence?
So I wouldn't say that. I mean, I'm sorry. I wouldn't really feel that is reality. I don't know if we have enough evidence to prove that all the epidemics are coming from Africa, or if it comes from Africa, why does it come from Africa? We need to base ourselves or our arguments on the basis of stronger evidences. Yes, there are arguments where Ebola or now Emburg and all other, but the great epidemics that we know of, the flus, uh, the viruses, including the virus that has in our life in our recent kind of histories like COVID that rocked the world. Those are not from Africa. I mean, which of the viruses that have emerged from Africa have rocked the world? I mean, if we really look at statistics in terms of the number of causalities across the globe as pandemic, which of those pandemics that were emerged in Africa have actually rocked the world? I have, maybe I didn't read enough, I didn't know much about it, or I didn't give as much attention to it. But in my view, in my logical kind of thinking, I don't think Africa is a source of, yeah, there could be epidemics here and there because of various reasons, but I am not really quite convinced that those pandemics that have really played, a detrimental effect across the globe are originated from Africa. I'm sorry. But one thing that I'm not really quite happy about, and I'm not quite happy. Not only this kind of arguments, debates of actually showing or dying Africa as a source of problem. Maybe we are not really very strong in terms of our economies. Maybe we are not great in terms of our political system and so on and so forth. But in terms of our contribution to disease distribution across the globe, no, we are not. I don't think that's the case. And African scientists, African researchers should also be careful if they are actually reporting that way. They have to generate good enough evidence to prove that one. But the West, I would say, probably have to be really scientifically ethical in terms of really shedding this black kind of doubts about Africa as a source of problem. No. That's not really how I feel. That's not how I believe. And we don't have really good evidences for that one. And perhaps if there are some evidences, even patchy ones, probably these are not coming from Africa, in my view.
Probably, and that, exactly. Thank you for answering it, because that's why I asked the question. Because I think there's a demonstration or a portrayal of Africa as, a dark continent where a lot of things are happening and a lot of problems are emerging from. And I think more amplification of whatever is happening in Africa that's negative more than is happening elsewhere. Do you think, because of this and the potential of misinformation, disinformation, whatever, do you think that the scientists probably can play a bigger role in painting a better picture of Africa out there? And, for example, even involving the lay people out here even more, like different communities, so that the real voices of Africa can be heard?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, that's really fundamental question. If you really ask me the true sense of mine, my personal belief about this, I am too critical of African education itself, African curriculum itself. I am always asking myself in a debate with my colleagues back in Ethiopia whether we have our own curriculum, say Ethiopian curriculum, which gives prominence to local wisdoms. Let's say Ethiopia is a big country with multiple cultures, and therefore you may not really include all the wisdoms, but what are the prominent wisdoms in the country that could potentially contribute to science, that could potentially contribute to scientific work? These are not really part of the curriculum that we are teaching. Sometimes we are borrowing those curriculum from elsewhere. Probably it is not just from one country, from multiple countries. And at the end of the day, we are not actually creating future African scientists as such. Perhaps we are creating scientists who are deserving rather African interest, Ethiopian interest, and so on and so forth. So that is fundamental problem, which means our researchers tend to comply not to national African interest, African challenges and problems. Instead, they tend to comply to the global kind. I mean, even then, they are not complying, very well to the extent possible. And as a result, compare publications that are coming from Africa. They are not there. I mean, they are not really that big enough, as compared to the global. African publications, do we see Africa in the rank of 1 to 10? Do we see, excellent publications in the field of agriculture, in the field of technology, science, and so on and so forth from Africa? So why is critical question to ask ourselves with. So as you said, part of the problem that we see, the dark part of it is maintained because African scientists are not coming out, to work against it. Why? Because the educational system they have gone through does not really help them to do that. Reason? In Kenya, I'm sure if Kenyan students at primary, secondary level have Kenyan wisdom actually integrated into universal kind of scientific rigor for that matter, and that is the case in Ethiopia. That's the case elsewhere. And if we have to really pull all the curriculums in Africa and see those curriculums are not really giving prominence to African kind of. So if you go to France, you have to do French. If you go to Russia, you have to do Russian language. And language is very important. It's critical. You understand? The language is a mechanism, is a vehicle through which your wisdom can basically prevail. Your wisdom can actually integrate into the broader kind of scientific community. So Uh, yeah, I mean, the dark side of Africa, I'm sure it will end. I mean, with the younger generation who are now realizing, oh, we have got resources. Yes, Africa has great potential, great resources, great minds that are serving probably the rest of the world instead of Africa, of course, because of various reasons. Um, so why did we fail? African scientists fail to counter this disinformation, misinformation about Africa? Is because the system that they have gone through does not help them to do that one. And now is a time where we have to start talking about this. Where we have to say no. I think we have to align our own values, our own interests, our own wisdom into what we teach, into the way we do research as well. That is missing, grossly missing as we speak. But that cannot continue.
Yeah.
And it's only then that this disinformation would actually stop. So is it tomorrow? Day after? But it will definitely be coming.
Yeah.
That's my belief.
Because Prof, now you have outlined the problem very well. And the understanding of what exactly needs to be done. But the problem is who will bail the cat? Like,
Yeah.
who will do it? Because I believe, like you as a scientist, you identify the problem. Will you drop in other scientists into this kind of reasoning, then get the political class in so that policies can be, who will actually bail the cat?
So I mean, if we have to think about solution, there are two potential approaches to address the problems. It's either to revolutionize the African educational research system, or otherwise to really introduce some kind of reform. Now, what do we need for that? We need a greater political commitment for that one, for both, for that matter. It's a kind of political, argument, decision, and commitment, for that matter, from those in the political will. However, so if there is no will at political level, at governance level, do we keep it there and live with it and suffer the consequences? No. I mean, there are really great African scientists who are coming out and now advocating, at least using what is now becoming a common language in research, common language in education, and actually expand from there. So that's about community engagement. So community engagement in research, community engagement in education, in training. So the moment you talk about community engagement, you are talking about now actually entertaining the community's wisdom, the community's value into what you do, which means into the teaching, into research, and so on and so forth. So myself, I have been, I've been advocating, as you were already saying, throughout my research, and now I'm seeing that there is really growing interest into engaging the community in what we do. In Ethiopia, there is a very big interest from the Ministry of Education, from universities, actually to engage communities in whatever we do. And I'm sure this is also the case elsewhere. And that's an organic, natural way of actually bringing about that change. It is not revolution where we are actually seeing robust change that quick. It's not reform where there is a common kind of agreement as Africa or part of country, but this is a natural process that is coming out. And that's why I say I believe the change is imminent, and definitely we are going to see. And now there are growing literature that we see about community engagement in research, where we see the role of community actually coming out into research activities. There are PhDs that we see are being done on these kind of things, and this is not natural that come from Africa. It has come from the donors. It has come from the West, the language. But how we have crafted that language into our use is the most important thing. So, yes, the reason that was brought in, understandably, is to make education relevant, research relevant, and it's also value for money. I mean, you give money for research activities for what? And therefore, that's actually probably knowingly or unknowingly, purposely or otherwise, that was crafted, but we've taken it up and said, oh, this is an opportunity. So Africans African scientists must actually, make use of this as an opportunity. It's not necessarily in the field of public health as such. It's not necessarily in the field of humanities or social sciences or medicine. It's in technology as well. It's in biomedical sciences as well, where, as you were mentioning earlier, a person who is collecting sample, blood sample, or whichever sample, plant sample, animal sample, which is basic science for that matter, have to actually convince those people from whom samples are collected, how, so that those people know what the sample is meant for,
Yeah.
and how that collection could actually contribute to their future. So that's how we are actually trying to really craft that community engagement in a very systematic way to bring about change in the way we do business.
And I like the way what you say about community engagement, because what I feel is once you engage the community and the community buys into what you're doing, the whole political system is dependent on these communities. Like the whole political leaders have to go back to the community for them to get whatever positions they get. So probably, as you said, it's a very organic way of changing things slowly, over time. I spoke to another prof who was telling me that Africa has long been affected by brain drain. And you've mentioned Africa's talent being outside there, benefiting the West and other places. And someone told me that there's usually a lot of them who would want to work back home but get frustrated for different reasons: lack of resources, lack of political goodwill, there's no enough research funds, everything. Do you think that from some of the problems that we are tackling as a continent, into the fact what you've said, that we have to be with communities, everything, do you think it's going to come to a time when we can, much as we are not working in a silo, get Africans providing solutions for Africa, and where we have our scientists not necessarily interested in going away, where they can just stick in and be very, very happy to work for the betterment of Africa without thinking outside?
Yeah. Again, that's a very good question. So, yeah, putting this in perspective is very important. Look, there was a time when the world used to talk about universalism, a time where, yeah, equality, equity were actually upheld, at least in principle, right? But that time probably has slowly, dissipated, where we started to see, inward looking, more focused kind of attention to your own, which is now more than ever, for that matter. So if you really look at it, this question within that perspective, I would say the time has come. I mean, remember earlier, in an organic way, those of us inside Africa, we are actually trying to grab opportunities to showcase that no, what we are doing have to be relevant to Africa, right? So whatever we do, be it in teaching or research, it has to be relevant. So that relevance could be ensured by actually considering the community as partners, as key stakeholders in whatever we do, right? So that the other domain is okay, there are great minds elsewhere. Remember, I said those great minds have been in use for the good of the country they are in, hosted by, serving for that matter, right? So they are educated within that framework. So we were all educated within that framework, and we stayed here and we realized that the problem that we see today, yeah, okay, maybe the way we were educated have actually limited us to think beyond, and so on and so forth. So you have to understand, those great talents, great minds, which can easily be tweaked for the benefit of Africa, are also trained the same procedure, and therefore, whenever they come back to Africa, they get frustrated easily. They seem to have forgotten, Africa, that dark continent that we are mentioning. So that to me is far-fetched in a way at the level of those scientists, those talents, because they have to always remember this is their continent, this is their country, this is their land, this is where they have grown up, and in no way would the host country, wherever they are, would say this is ours, irrespective of how great those guys are. You understand? So, as I said, they would have actually, they could easily, tweak their talent for the betterment of Africa. So, yes, you are right. I mean, although they need a bit of commitment, a bit of passion for their own continent, they can contribute a lot for the improvement of African education, African science, African development. I understand in the rest of the world, governance system probably is much better. Probably they are much comfortable, talking, making their opinions, um, doing what is right for them. Probably that's not the case here in Africa. But we are living here in Africa anyway. I mean, we are actually, we are standing the pressure as well, and it's only then that we can convince also, the government, the structures, the governance structures that will have actually accommodate this kind and they are serving. Certainly, it is not within the field of science that we are going to see changes. I'm pretty certain we are going to see change in the governance structure in Africa as well, because of the realities on ground. I mean, great, now people are talking about Trump, making problems here and there, and perhaps pulling resources from here and there. To me, wonderful. That's great. That's actually a great opportunity for us to look into ourselves instead of looking outside, blaming ourselves instead of blaming others. This is a great opportunity, and the same is true for those scientists elsewhere. That's an opportunity for them to say, okay, that's now, okay, that's what I'm expected to do. So I would say, yes, they have a great potential, and great, resources that they could contribute to. And there is no frustration to me, in terms of, okay, things are not going. I mean, things are not good. Things are not really the way they used to, but we are all in it. We are also doing, business despite all the challenges. And it's only for the sake of, I mean, we can go elsewhere. I mean, I can go to the States, to Europe, to Asia, and I can just, lead a life of my own. But I said, this is my route. This is my place. And therefore I have to keep contributing. You understand?
Yeah.
So there are several such scientists in Africa who have really kept pushing, and that push is now, slowly bringing about change. And therefore, the diaspora, the talents elsewhere, could actually, bring in their also contribution to, to boost the efforts. That's how I see it.
Yeah, because so as you're saying, it needs a lot of personal like motivation and drive and patriotism to know that. And I think what else you're saying is they should keep looking at the opportunities and not seeing the gaps as opportunities and not as challenges. I was reading an article today where China is going to or thinks it's going to receive a lot of mathematicians and other scientists in because they are of course ramping up all those conditions that make it suitable for so many scientists to go their way. Definitely, yes, they want to be even more ahead than they are. And I'm wondering if an African scientist is today asked, given the best of conditions, to go work in a place where the systems are very good, the facilities are there, if they will. For example, for you specifically, Professor Berkisa, if today you were given an opportunity suddenly to go work in China or elsewhere, how hard will it be for you to say no?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I think you talked about patriotism. You mentioned
Yeah.
patriotism earlier. So maybe for those who are listening to us, our conversation, it's always useful to put things in perspective as well. So I was
Please
working
do.
for the UN. I worked for UNICEF for 9 years, and normally, if you work for a UN organization for 10 years, then you can easily get your pension. So yeah, I mean, I came from academics and I joined UN, worked for 9 years on a senior position. And, I was not happy. After having done 6 years, maybe 5 years, I started to like feel this is not my place. So I started, developing my proposal for my PhD. So I said, I have to do my PhD. That's, uh, that's what I should do. So I kept on writing proposals, looking for resources, for sponsor scholarship, and so on and so forth. So, at year 7, there were some green lights that I got, one of my protocols accepted for funding, and then I have to get school, a relevant school, within the framework of the institution that funded. So okay, I mean, putting things very simple, I got the school as well. So year 8, I actually applied for my PhD and I got it. So year 9, I said I'm resigning. So yeah, I mean, it's a shock for my Ethiopian colleagues because a black guy, working for the UN, an excellent institution, everybody is dying to get it, and me resigning was a shock. But to me, that was normal. So the head of the country director of the organization knew, he had arrived from Sudan, new American, um, named Ted Chiban. And he said, yeah, my friend, but why do you have to leave? So I told him, I have this passion to do my PhD. I just wanted to remain in academics and so on and so forth. So, but if you want to, would you support us? And I say, yes. Can you write a letter? Yeah, I can write. So the human resource guy said, but you have only 1 year. After 1 year, if you stay 1 year, I'm not a pension person. I'm not a money person. I don't want to stay one more year. So what I'm saying is that patriotism and belief in your values, commitment to yourself, having your confidence in you makes who you are, right? So yeah, I went for my PhD. I resigned from UNICEF. I went for my PhD after coming from my PhD. In 2011, Ethiopia was organizing ICASA, the National Conference on AIDS and STI in Africa. I was actually recruited as while I was still in Switzerland doing my PhD. I was asked to be a committee member, core group organizer. So there, after I came back, October 2011, so this UNICEF guy who was there when I was leaving, who talked to me, said, welcome, Lisa. Why don't you join us again? So I asked myself, why did I resign from UNICEF? Was it for me to get my PhD and call Dr. Megisa? So I said, sorry, I have to go give back what I've learned to the people. Do I need money? Of course I need money. So as you said, tomorrow if somebody comes and say, okay, here is the money, I am not for sale, my brother. I am here with purpose. However, again, to make things perhaps a bit easier for all other Africans, we always have the opportunity to have services there, but serving your country at the same time. No one would say don't serve your country. There always are opportunities. There are people who are coming from the States, from Europe, come back to where they went to for primary school, secondary school, and come and share their experience, come and advise. And even from distance, thanks to technology now, you can Zoom and actually contributing. So there always are opportunities. So yes, I mean, those who are interested, if I am interested in money, yes, I can do China, but at the same time, I can serve my people, my country, my community. So that's about dialogue. That's about negotiation. And I don't think there is any country that would say, no, I'm buying you complete. There always are spaces for you to contribute to the bigger good of your society, your country, your community. So yes, I know. I mean, it's if you feel like you are selling yourself complete, then I feel like no, that's not me. But there are opportunities, as I said, where you can negotiate for a win-win, where you can serve them, but you can serve your own community at the same time.
Yeah. You speak passionately about community. You speak very passionately about the prospects of Africa, and you're patriotic indeed. And now we are ending the show. Finally, looking at your camera, probably you can just briefly, in a minute or so, generally probably speak about why it is important, why everybody in the community matters, and why scientists should work with everybody according to your experience.
Yes, thank you so much. So to me, talking about science and talking about scientific contribution from scientists is about serving the community. Serving the community is not in an empty kind of vessel. I would say community has a lot more to offer. So it's a matter of boosting that capacity, making that resource actually work better for the betterment of the community. So in whatever we do, unless we engage the community, unless we understand, recognize the values that communities have, the wisdom that is there at the community level, the resources that are there to solve the problem itself, then our effort is futile. I would say, probably we have done quite a lot, and we are still asking ourselves what happened. That was all my contribution. Where is the change? We are not seeing the change because we are working with ourselves, not with the community. So working with the community is the way forward, is an opportunity for growth, for development of Africa, and African scientists, African researchers are expected to really, change their way of doing business, be it in science, in research, in development in general, where community should play centerpiece. That's my personal advice, my personal understanding, my personal conviction, and that's what I do, and I'll keep pushing on this agenda.
Wow, thank you. You should see Professor's eyes glow when he talks about the prospects of Africa, and of course, the need to be patriotic And you have had history, so much to get from what is discussed with us, but mainly that we need to change the perspective of Africa by putting our best foot forward and informing the world that no, it's not the way you've always perceived us. And also, he's noted the importance of having every single person on board, starting from the bottom, coming up, getting solutions from the people that you are supposed to be providing, getting ideas from the people you are providing solutions for. And that is the lesson for today. Thank you very much, Professor Mirgisa, for joining us in studio. I'll teach you a few Swahili words before we leave, but that is the end of this podcast. Thank you very much for listening in. Professor Mirgisa Kaba from the University of Addis Ababa, who is a social and cultural epidemiologist, and wears so many other hats on top of that. Appreciate you for joining us for this show. Until next time, this is the Africa Science Dialogue.